Welcome to the Lonestar Collective podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Williams. I'm joined by co-host Gramps this week. This week, our guest is the Screwston Scarecrow. How's everybody doing?
Doing good.
I'm doing all right.
We were discussing right before we started. You go by Screwston Scarecrow. Obviously, there's some anonymity to be had here with the discussion, so we're gonna keep that as best we can. Obviously, like you said, you don't want to dox yourself. That's our new age term for all of this, doxing. So we want to start off with, let's get a little bit of a background on you. What you do? What you know?
Yeah, I grow pot is the base of that whole thing, and not
that kind of guy.
Yeah, not hemp or not like completely illegal, I guess, in this state. Kind of weird.
Yeah.
It's the strangest thing is telling somebody the other day at an event was that I was like, growing pot's legal in this state as long as you have a hemp license. And like, well, you can't grow pot. I was like, you know what you're doing? You can. Really? I was like, the way the loopholes are running out, getting kind of really weird.
Yeah, I have a couple of friends who have talked about, you can, apparently there are some workarounds with the hemp license, but I am not allowed to participate in that program anyways, because I have a felony from a past raid.
Okay.
You were mentioning to us that before we started. You want to go into that? How much you want to go into that about? Like,
why don't we start off with when you got started growing and all of that kind of stuff? Start us off at the beginning.
Yeah, so in 2002, I smoked my first pot, my first joint that my friend down the street, Billy, we took it from his parents, as young kids do. And I knew right away that, I like this, So I also didn't have much money, and I realized that, this is a plant. I just need to figure out how to grow it. So I did that quite unsuccessfully for years, just getting a little bit better and a little bit better, because back then I didn't have the internet on my phone or anything like that. So it was very hard to learn. I didn't even know about photo periods or none of that. Starting out, I had to fail terribly and walk my ass up to Barnes and Noble and read as much as I could before walking back home and trying to get it all figured out in my closet.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question: is where did you start growing, like everybody else in your closet, right?
Yeah, in my closet with probably like 2 gallon, just like regular planter pots that my mom had, or what just that was laying around really.
Yeah.
And I did not. I mean, it took probably like 2 years before I actually got a harvest, and even then, it was just like little wispy bracts with some stigma coming out of it. Like, it wasn't even an actual bud, but I thought it was cool because I did it. It was free. Yeah. And I was seeing the good pot, I was buying good pot stuff from the market. So I knew that how good it could be if I could just get it figured out. And that's pretty much, it's just been trying to have better pots.
Nothing wrong with that.
You remind me of the old thing of you find a room, you throw foil up on the walls, you get whatever lights you can, whatever pots and seedling starters you can have, and wherever you can grab them, and you're doing everything you can to make the electric bill look like the same from the previous month to the next.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never worried about electric bill because I always figured, as long as you're not stealing it and as long as you pay for it, they have an incentive to not get you caught up from the electric company's point of view, at least, because I've had a friend who blew up a whole house, with light, and he got someone with some electrical skill to tap in before the meter or whatever, and it only took a couple of months, of that before that house got raided.
It's not hard for them to figure that out.
Not in this day and age.
I did electrical stuff in the Navy, and I can tell you right now that they've got a meter that taps off that shows everything that's going to any house. So the moment you're tapping in and getting stuff that isn't showing up on a meter, yet the electricity's still going up, they go, somebody somewhere is doing something. And they just go by and they can visually see it. They see where somebody's put a wire in.
Yeah, it's not hard to detect it at all.
Yeah, I mean, I've never gotten in trouble for that, at least. That's not what got me raided. I got raided just because of bad decision on everyone's behalf, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember at one point I at one point tried doing this, I'm gonna lie, and it ended up that first thing I was told was, hey, you got to go get one of those, not halogen, but the lights you put over like a garage.
Yeah, the metal halide.
Yeah,
probably.
Yeah.
And I was informed, hey, guess what? Those things are going to run your electric bill up. And obviously going to be heat coming out of that room. Pay attention to your electric bill, because I was living outside of Killeen at the time, and apparently that was something supposedly they monitored, was if you had an off-the-wall electric bill out of nowhere, so like winter, between like summer and winter, when you probably should be having the air conditioner not running and the heater not running, they go, oh, why is that guy's electricity through the roof?
I mean, they're that proactive about it, that they're watching people's electric bills. That's insane. I mean, we've got to have better things to spend our tax dollars on, don't we?
You think so?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think we're at that like tipping point here in the state, and that's why I've decided to kind of start poking my head out a little bit more, because the way I figure it, the way that I've seen in other states with other operators in those states, if we don't, I'm not going to be able to have a place, in that future market.
Yeah.
If other people like me do not at least take the opportunity to try and help move things along, because if we leave it in the hands of legislators and, money interests, then it's going to be one company running everything. And, no one who helped build and sustain the market that they're turning legal is going to be able to, participate in it.
Well, I agree. And something that goes with it, though, as well as long term, it all starts to mishmash one another, and people, it starts to come together. It'll break apart. And I think like a good example now of like how market can do that is like streaming services. We went from having everything on cable and people going, well, I can go download things online. And to fight that, we started having Netflix went streaming, and then Hulu and a couple others, and we pretty much went to 3 or 4 main providers, and it was great. And it fragmented. And now we're back to the cable thing again, and it's slowly coming back together. It goes through the cycle, but definitely I would say like our current operators, they're obviously they want to keep their market share. They're going to do, especially the medical ones. They want to keep as much market share as they can, but I mean, obviously a state as big as ours, somebody else is going to have to come in and just meet the demand eventually.
Yeah, well, they're going to have to change the whole way that licensing and that whole apparatus works. I mean, the way it's set up now, it's number one, DPS don't need to have anything to do with it. It's medicine. Why the police force having control over that? That's just insanity.
Well, the cost of the licensing too is it's quite. So I feel like they made the law not to work for starters because of using the language of having it as a prescription. I don't think that they were expecting any doctors to actually, risk their licenses, because that's what they're currently doing.
Yeah, I know they weren't expecting as many to, that's for sure, because there's a lot more than even I figured would do that. So I know the lawmakers were saying, maybe 1 or 2 join in, but how many doctors are there now, Jesse? Do we have a number?
I do not have a number off the top of my head.
The last one I saw was well over 1,200 doctors that were signed up.
Oh, wow.
Well, part of something that kind of slipped out, and talking to some people in the industry outside of our state about this, some other lawyers, is that DPS here kind of slipped up when we talked about gun laws and gun rights. And they said, well, as far as we know, the way we've set the program up, you're not losing your gun rights if you're in the medical program in Texas. And it was like, wait, what? And they went, as far as we know, we've set our program up in a way that is federally allowable. The only way that would ever work out is if our program falls under the actual compassionate use laws, or otherwise known as right to try laws. And if we're under that, then it's like, then we're federally covered. And it's this weird thing of, does it mean that they can technically prescribe if we're under federal right to try? And what I guess another thing that really begs for us to start asking is, I wonder where the federal government's going to draw the line at with saying, well, this right to try is okay and that right to try is not. Somehow I guess the state thinks it's a THC level, and to me that makes no sense.
Yeah, I would have to agree. It makes no sense whatsoever. I'm trying to look up and see if I lied about how many doctors there are or not.
Well, it's difficult to get a lead on that, because this last session they made it where they removed. It's not automatic that the prescribers are publicly listed. They can opt out of that. People actually have to go look to see if a prescriber is there, like where the nearest one is. They've got a little search feature on the website now where you can put in your county and see what doctors are in the county. They're saying as of September 2022, last month, only 632, but I'd swear I heard a number a lot bigger than that.
I mean, 600, that's still quite a bit.
That's still quite a few.
Especially with the telemedicine. Like, that's how I got mine, was through a telemedicine appointment.
Yeah. And then it's that COVID made that easier. Everybody wanted to go to that telehealth. I guess to me, that's the one blessing and biggest blessing in disguise about COVID was telehealth becoming this prominent feature.
Yeah.
So with talking about that, you said you're part of the Teacup program, right?
Yes. Obviously I smoke pot that I grow, so I don't necessarily have to be a part of the program, but I feel like it's important because the only way that we're going to be able to bring the cost down is by making it to where they can make money off of sales and off of like possibly changing to where you can have actual dispensaries be able to hold actual medicine overnight. And if we do not have the patient base for that, they are not going to do it. Because right now I feel like they're making all of the money off of the license. People don't understand after the first 2 or 3 years. By that point, you've already spent over $500,000 in licensing, and that's with having to get the actual facility up to code before ever actually getting the license, which is also another ridiculous hurdle. Like, how do you get an investor with that? Hey, we don't know if we have the license, but I need $300,000.
Oh yeah, it's way more insane than that, way more than spent. We got to go into a sponsor break here at the Lonestar Collective. So yet again, like I said, time for a sponsor break here at Lonestar Collective Podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Williams. I'm joined by co-host this week, Gramps. Our guest this week is Screwston Scarecrow. We'll be right back after our sponsor messages.
Cultivators is a sponsor of Texas Cannabis Collective and the Lonestar Collective podcast. Oak Cliff focuses on quality assurance with their hemp products while providing customer service to help you discover cannabinoids to meet your needs. Their product line includes hemp flower, pre-rolls, CBG tinctures, edibles, Delta 8, and merch. For more information on their products' quality or to shop online today, visit oakcliffcultivators.com or contact them at info@oakcliffcultivators.com.
Thrive Apothecary offers an experience truly unique from anything else in Texas. A full-service cannabis solution that is doctor-owned and offers customers every level of cannabis legally available in Texas. From traditional CBD products to emerging hemp-derived THC edibles, smokables, and now medical cannabis. As a licensed medical cannabis provider, prospective patients from anywhere in Texas can book a sponsored online eligibility consultation to determine if they qualify for a medical marijuana prescription from the comfort of their own home. Plus, for Texas veterans, the first prescription appointment is donated by Thrive. Visit thrivetx.com for more information.
Welcome back to the Lonestar Collective podcast, the official podcast of Texas Cannabis Collective. Distributed on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Facebook, and much more, to give Texans information regarding policy, industry, and culture. Here is this week's host, Jesse Williams and Gramps.
Welcome back to the Lonestar Collective podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Williams. I'm joined this week by co-host Gramps. This episode, our guest is Screwston Scarecrow. We're talking about the ridiculous amount of fees you have to pay to get a license to do the medical dispensary. And if I remember correctly, you pay like $400,000 up front the initial year. Every year afterwards is another $300,000. And you have to prove you have, I think it's like $1 million in liquid asset, Gramps?
Something like that. It's a ridiculous amount in liquid assets that's required. It's just insane. It's the only way I know to put it. It's just insane. And those are some of the major things that we need to get changed. And you're 100% right, Screwston, with the idea that the more people we get involved, the more doctors that sign up, the more patients that are signed up and actively a member, even if you're not, because the meds are expensive. Let's be honest. If you have to pay all those fees, the meds are expensive. So we all know majority of the patients that are on the program are probably supplementing their meds in other ways. Let's just be honest, right? So, but still, if you can get on there, I'm one who's fixing to sign up because I have an existing condition, neuropathy, peripheral neuropathy. I do qualify, so I'm going to sign up just before the session here, just so there's one more on the rolls.
Yes, and I don't want people to get the medication work. It works very well.
Yeah.
is that it's expensive, and that's a price that's artificially made. And this time, not on the company's fault. Like it's 100% this scheme that they had made for the way our program is going to run out.
Well, they made it so it would be intentionally I can't even talk, expensive, so that fewer people would be involved. The very same reason why they made it a necessity for a physician to write a prescription against federal law to be able to participate. It is to make it difficult. That was their whole plan behind it. I firmly believe that.
Oh, even what was it? The first year our program went in place, they didn't license anybody. The first 2 years, they didn't license anybody. The legislature actually had to come back and say, you must license 3 dispensaries, and you must do it by this date.
Which
Or
that
we wouldn't
number
even
is
have
crazy
those.
too. 3 dispensaries for the entire state is, which people in other states, I guess, probably don't quite comprehend how large Texas actually is.
Well, not just the size and space and mileage, but population-wise, there's 30 million people in Texas.
Well, when we put the plan in place, as you said, they didn't want people on it. We had one thing that qualified, and it was you had to have intractable epilepsy, and they defined it as you had to go to like 2 to 3 different doctors. They had to say that you had tried almost every medication imaginable, and then from there they could put you on this 0.5% THC by volume. I think even the amount of CBD, it was like you had to have a 1-to-1 at the time.
I think so. Yeah,
it was very limited. Pretty much, I think there was 30 people, Gramps, that were in the program.
There wasn't very many that first year.
So one of those things, it wasn't even why even have 3 at that point,
which was a success in their eyes because that's what they shot for.
We obviously need more, like you said, 30 people versus 30 million. You obviously, when you get to be 30 million, and even half of them or a quarter of them could have access to medical, then the number of dispensaries becomes ridiculously low.
Yeah, and I say 30 million. The rate they're moving in, it may be 31 million already.
Yeah, well, I think people also overlooked in their attempt to make it a non-workable program by writing in that you had to have a prescription. That allows a lot of leeway with people and testing in their everyday life, which I don't think that people quite take into account whenever, because I get into arguments quite a bit online with a bunch of different people who don't understand the program whatsoever, who for some reason think that it's a flower program or something like that, and they don't take into account, yes, it may be expensive, but for some people, and I would assume quite a bit, it allows protection from the law from certain agencies who might be trying to take things from you, because you have an actual prescription from a doctor, not a recommendation.
That is the biggest thing, especially this last session we added in, like family court side, civil law, we put in that if your child is prescribed this, that cannot be the reason that DFPS comes and pulls your kid out of the home and takes them away from parents. That if the parents are using, it doesn't even have to be teacup, if they're using, they now have to prove the parents' use is actually causing harm to the child.
I did not know that last part. I know the last push that I've actually interacted with you quite a bit, Jesse, on Facebook under a different name, which I can send you a message afterward, but with you and David Bass, and quite a bit about, hey, are trying to check in on patient protection that are being pushed. So they would be written into law and they would have to be, followed by agency instead of up to them whether or not they want it.
Speaking of that, a discussion that's come up this year I tried investigating into is that we as a state don't have a law in place that says that, say, you go to court and they want to drug test you while you're either awaiting trial or during trial or you're on probation, parole. We as a state don't have a law that says, oh yeah, you're covered if you have a prescription, because usually that's a federal item. The federal government has said, hey, if your doctor has prescribed you Ritalin, then obviously you're going to pop for cocaine, your drug test. But because it's been prescribed and it's scheduled such and such, you're covered. And then this is where it gets tricky. Talking about right to try laws. If we're under a right to try law, it's shouldn't we be covered under a prescription? But there's been cases here in Texas where people have gone to court and the probation officers won in court and went, nope, I don't want to have them pop on this. I don't care if they're in the program. And it's well, where's the coverage for that? And there is none. There's none for anything. In this state, technically, the judge can go, I don't feel comfortable with you being on Ritalin, and I don't feel comfortable you being on Adderall. Doctor needs to find a non-stimulant for your issue.
Yeah, I think the amount that government officials can control your life when you are under community supervision or whatever, in aspects that they have absolutely zero base in, like medical things or whatever.
They have too much, in my opinion, even if you're not on probation or parole for something. In my opinion, they got their nose in our business way too much, period. And in that scenario, it's even tenfold more. You're right. But
the thing I've said about this, it's come up because of a different topic. And I'm not going to go into the abortion debate thing, but it's me, it's come up, and it's the same analogy here, is that if the state ever says, well, it's supposed to be up to your doctor, and then you have to go to court and a judge gets to decide otherwise, it never was up to your doctor to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
If your doctor says, hey, you need this, and the judge goes, well, I don't think so, and the judge doesn't have a medical degree, even though the state has went, hey, doctors get to make the medical decisions and judges need to put that in the factor, the judge can go, no, I don't care. Your doctor never really had the decision. The state did.
Yeah, it's kind of nuts.
Could I ask you guys a question?
Sure.
What is the future of the market that you would like to see?
Let Gramps take that one first. I've got a hot take.
My thought process for what the market should be, not only in Texas but nationwide, it should be completely descheduled at the federal level and at all states, and there should be no limitations to possession. There should be no limitations to home grow. If you want to grow it like you want to grow tomatoes or green beans or carrots in your backyard, have at it, folks. That's the way it ought to be.
My thing is, I love that. I just tell people, I go, if you want that, stop. It's something people don't like to say. It's like, you got to stop calling it medicine. And even though you want to use it as such, when you start calling it that, the state and the government gets really weird and wonky about it because, well, we've had 100-something years of doctors being trained that medicine means X, Y, and Z. And if it doesn't mean X, Y, and Z, it's not medicine. But I totally believe what Gramps was saying. I mean, I've even talked to police officers about it who are in favor of legalization, total in favor of it. And their thing is, you need to treat it like tomatoes, like any other vegetable, put on the shelf. At worst, possibly you treat it like it's alcohol, regulate it as such, put it down as such, go from there. And probably the step in between that, and this is where I sit at right now, and I think it's most feasible, is to run a medical program the way Oklahoma has. And that's doctor says, hey, you need this, and you get it.
I think it will help you.
I don't know if you've seen that Key and Peele sketch where the guy's trying to get his medical marijuana, and he's just trying to dance around, and the doctor's like, well, do you have this problem? Are you in pain? And the guy's like, I got AIDS. I got this. And the doctor finally just slaps the living snot at him. He goes, does that hurt? Well, yeah. And he goes, here's your marijuana prescription.
Yeah, it ought to be pretty simple, cut and dry, in my opinion, as it was before Prohibition ever got a hold of it in the first place.
Okay.
I get where there's people that have concerns about going beyond the medical program with what we've seen here in the U.S. It's that everywhere we had a medical program first, and then it went into legalization, the quality of the marijuana went down, and the patients wound up losing out on it because they didn't have the quality they needed out of it.
Well, that goes back to the lack of proper regulation. They try to just tax shit out of it and call that regulation. That's what I've seen,
Well, they set up mandated middlemen, which if I'm growing on my farm and, because of the law, one day I'm able to go into the back of a dispensary with a couple of pounds. They get the product, move it on to the patient. I walk away with my money. And then the very next day, because the laws take effect, I now have to have my product bought by a distribution center that hopefully gets it into the hands of dispensaries before it starts going bad, because we're not dealing with liquor or something like that holds pretty much forever.
Yeah.
And if they have their own grow because they're a vertically integrated company, my stuff is probably never going to see the shelves for at least 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
And you make a point there that people do this. And I remember watching a long time ago about when California was doing it the way you talked about starting off with, where they had these people who did these grows. One of the things they were looking for was like spider mites, and they look for mold. Go through with like a little jeweler's glass, and they're looking at it really careful, and they do a lab test on it. But like people don't realize that even though you put it in a bag, put it away, it can still grow mold. It can still get bugs that get into it and cause problems and wreak havoc, especially the longer and longer it sits. So yeah, if you have a product that sits there for 5 months, obviously you pull it out and you're like, this doesn't smell good. There's something wrong with it. And people can't ingest that. They're going to go to try to smoke it. It's going to fuck their lungs up.
Yeah, if I only knew about mold when I was a kid. Because I can promise you my plug, that's all he had was moldy weed.
Yeah, it's a very touchy thing, growing quality product. So we have got to go into our next sponsor break here at the Lone Star Collective podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Williams. I'm joined this week by co-host Chris Gramps Brazolia. This week's guest is the Screwston Scarecrow. We'll be right back after our sponsor messages.
Oak Cliff Cultivators is a sponsor of Texas Cannabis Collective and the Lone Star Collective podcast. Oak Cliff focuses on quality assurance with their hemp products while providing customer service to help you discover cannabinoids to meet your needs. Their product line includes hemp flower, pre-rolls, CBG tinctures, edibles, Delta 8, and merch. For more information on their products' quality or to shop online today, visit oakcliffcultivators.com or contact them at info@oakcliffcultivators.com.
Thrive Apothecary offers an experience truly unique from anything else in Texas. A full-service cannabis solution that is doctor-owned and offers customers every level of cannabis legally available in Texas. From traditional CBD products to emerging hemp-derived THC edibles, smokables, and now medical cannabis. As a licensed medical cannabis provider, prospective patients from anywhere in Texas can book a sponsored online eligibility consultation to determine if they qualify for a medical marijuana prescription from the comfort of their own home. Plus, for Texas veterans, their first prescription appointment is donated by Thrive. Visit thrivetx.com for more information.
Welcome back to the Lone Star Collective podcast, the official podcast of Texas Cannabis Collective. Distributed on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Facebook, and much more, to give Texans information regarding policy, industry, and culture. Here is this week's host, Jesse Williams and Gramps.
Welcome back to the Lone Star Collective podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Williams. I'm joined by co-host Gramps this week. This week's guest is the Screwston Scarecrow. About ridiculous moldy weed. Ain't that the great thing to be having on your mind as you're listening to a weed podcast?
It happens sometimes.
One of those facts of life.
Man, I got that song stuck in my head. I'm going to get Chris. Last thing I need is 80s television shows theme songs stuck in my head.
You're welcome.
I got a guy laughing from that the rest of the night. So Scarecrow, we were talking a little bit. You mentioned a little bit earlier, and we talked a little bit before the show about you went through a raid, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm a big fan of learning from others' mistakes, and anything to make it more difficult for the cops.
Causing a ruckus, I'll say. I don't want to say exactly what happened because that kind of narrows down who I could be. But there, some bad decisions and a lot of loud noises got the cops called, which had happened before. But the constable who came out was real cool about it and stuff. He told us, hey, y'all just keep it down. Your neighbor goes to work at night, so sleeps during the day. Just chill out. And my roommate didn't think about that a couple months later, and our neighbor just kind of had enough with us. So he called the cops, told them, they're drug trafficking and shit like that. So they showed up, the whole nine with the guns and whatnot.
Yeah.
I denied them entry, and because I met them out on the porch trying to you're gonna at least have to wait here until a warrant. And then they heard my dogs, and they told me, hey, I will get this warrant, and when we do, and we come in there, I really hope that your dogs don't scare me too much, because they might end up getting shot. And me being a sensitive buck, I they let me go put my dogs in the cage and promise that they wouldn't kill them, so I let them in after that. And I had some people over, and they started splitting us up and all that. My brothers were pretty solid, and I told the cops all this shit's mine, everything in here is mine. So they ended up letting them go, luckily. And searched my house and shit. Just found a large quantity of pot and hash. And luckily my grow was EC. I decommissioned my grow a month before that because I was moving it. And which honestly it doesn't really matter because I got a first degree felony. It's not like they weren't going to give me a capital offense for grown weed, so, which actually is something that I don't think people in this state understand. We don't actually have laws against cultivation. What happens is, in that cultivation, that is possession of it, which is often why if cops find out that you're growing, they will wait, if they can, to bust you until like right before harvest or right after, so it's as heavy as possible. Even though it's mostly water, but they don't care about that.
What's strange now, you say that, and I didn't realize it. With our hemp law going in place, they now do have a method to go after you under cultivation, because they could go after you and say you were growing hemp without a license. Up until that starts to flower and the THC comes out, it's all legally hemp now.
Which I have thought about and talked about too. I talked about with a Texas hemp organization, like, hey, what's the charge for illegal, growing hemp without a license? Because either way, it's not like those dudes don't pop pot at a certain point, so this is a plant, and I don't think that the lawmakers understand that you can't just flip a switch and make it stay under a certain amount of THC. Sometimes that just happens.
Yeah.
So it makes me wonder how messy things could get in a case if you were to try and just say, hey, I'm an unlicensed hemp grower, and if it's at a certain point where you have enough resin content to, pop pot, just saying, oh, well, I guess that's hot hemp. I don't know what to tell you. Obviously you're going to get arrested, you can go to jail and shit, but how will that play out in court, and what precedent would it afterward,
What did they tell you? That's what I want to know. What did they tell you about that?
Oh, no one has any answers. No one's dumb enough to try, I guess, at this point. Someone's got to do it. One of y'all that's listening.
We've seen the inverse of it. We had the guys on the Sky and Hobbs out in Navarro County that they had their licenses. They had everything in order, and the sheriffs came out and was like, no, you're growing pot, and got them for having pot.
Yeah.
And it took a year for them to finally drop it, because they're like, well, nobody told us. We didn't know.
I thought they were supposed to keep up on current law. Isn't that what law enforcement's supposed to do? Isn't that their job, law enforcement? Isn't that part of that, knowing the law? Just saying.
Qualified immunity, my ass.
That's a whole nother subject. We don't even want to go down that rabbit hole tonight.
The cops these days act like the villain from Lethal Weapon 2. They stand there, I got diplomatic immunity. Pretty much what they're doing now. Moment of silence for that.
So I was going to ask you, your Instagram is about seeds. So do you provide seeds to people, or is that something you're starting to do? Tell us a little about that.
Well, at a certain point, so the way that I grow, I like sifting as large of populations as I can to be able to truly find like a real keeper, the actual unique one out of, the 100, instead of, I see some people say, oh yeah, this is my keeper cut, and they only, pop 3 feminine seeds, so you only have 3 individuals look through. And just in doing that, I guess I got really interested with how things pass, like how traits pass from parents to progeny and the weird interactions that happen. So I only do this for myself, really, because I like good pot, and I do want other people to have, better pot. So right now I'm kind of like part of a seed club, I guess, where we're just a couple of dudes, who all have the same passion in doing this.
Sure.
Just working together to be able to look at more plants, really, to be able to make stuff and actually like move projects along much more than we could with our own garden.
That explains it perfectly. I just wanted to kind of clarify a little there, because people are going to look you up on your Instagram and whatnot and see that and think, I wonder, and then start bugging the crap out of you. So now clarify, maybe you won't have that problem.
Oh no! So I don't plan on really because it's going to happen here, right? They lost. There's no coming back.
Oh no!
We're going to end up having legal pop.
Yeah.
But I don't really want to be an operator in that future market.
Yeah.
At least not in any real capacity. But what I would like to do is help the other operators here, because I feel like our climate, what people on the larger scale are not quite grasping yet is that this is an agricultural product, right?
Yeah.
Everybody wants, these certain cut. Oh, I need that flower. Oh, I need that flower. But what they should be doing is figuring out what people like about that cut, like what flavor they're looking for whenever they're like, oh, I want this kind of pot specifically. They need to find that flavor in something that works for their region. Because at some point, when we get far enough down the line, this is going to be treated like an agricultural product. The majority of the market is going to be mixed like greenhouse, just because that it's not cost effective. Like you see businesses going down right now all over the country in these legal states because there's not a risk anymore. They're not, hiding from cops and robbers all the goddamn time. They're not going to jail and shit like that. At least not the way they used to be. So the prices drop. They're able to do a whole acre or blow out, 20,000 lights in one warehouse. Like crazy shit, that you do, even if you had the balls to do, you couldn't do that here, at least not for long. And that's going to drive the price down. And there will still be like the need market for very, very high quality indoor pot. That's always going to be there.
Sure.
But you can get, I think, better pot in a mix like greenhouse. Just because no matter what light you use, it's never going to be the sun. You're never going to get, those nuances in the final product from your environment, from your soil, from the area that you are in, imparting, the quote unquote terroir onto that product. So I want to be able to make things for that future market, the very future, so that people in our area will be able to grow, long flowering varieties, because we can take shit to December most years, and you can't do that in the majority of the country. So when it is able to be moved across state lines, I think that is where, we will have an edge on the market. If everyone's growing, I don't know, just name whatever random kissing cousin cookies bullshit is out there. If everyone's growing that, we're all going to be cropping it at the same time. Where the market's just going to be flooded. It's not going to be worth it. But if there are Texas farmers who are, if people know, oh shit, we can get those special unique things that, people in Washington, and, Northern California for the most part, just anywhere above a certain point in the United States, they just can't grow because their season is not long enough to support it. And that's the type of stuff that I'm working on. Because I just want to be able to, I make my money elsewhere. I just want to be able to provide tools for our region to be able to succeed and like have a place at the table, because I think we deserve it.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, it is getting to be that point in time where we wrap up our show here at the Lonestar Collective podcast. We thank you for joining us, giving us your time, Screwston Scarecrow. Really been appreciative. It's a very interesting conversation we've had here. Just insight about the other side of the market we normally don't hear about. Yeah. We really appreciate you joined us this week.
Thank you for having me.
Gramps, you got any final thoughts you want to put out?
I was just going to say, you talk about more and more people getting involved. Have you got any last minute advice for people who, like yourself, maybe, and how they can do what you're doing and getting involved and pushing this subject forward?
On the legal aspect, is that right?
Yes, yes.
I mean, the telehealth appointments, it doesn't matter where you are, you can get them. The program does, I think that there is, delivery in at least Texas OG does delivery. But there's also like pop-up spots and kind of like a dispensary where you can go and pick up your medicine in your city. I don't know, people just need to start, it's okay. We're all adults. We enjoy this thing. We need to start kind of poking our, within reason is where we're at, but we need to start poking our heads out a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
All righty. Appreciate you giving your feedback and your input on this. Been a hell of an interview. That's going to do it for this week here at the Lonestar Collective podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Williams. I'm joined this week by co-host Gramps. This week, our guest was the Screwston Scarecrow. We had an interesting conversation about the cut market, the legal market, the illegal market, future of Texas, and having the proper genetics and growth to have here. Thank you, everybody, for their time. We hope that if you're watching the YouTube version of this, you give us a like and a subscribe so other people can get this in their feed and they can get news and updates. Hope everybody has a great week and enjoy yourselves. Be safe.